Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty interesting show for you here. Make sure you stick around for that. But before we get to it, talking a little James Harden tonight and some amazing stats I heard about him today that'll probably blow your mind. Let's make sure we go ahead and do what we got to do. And if you're here on YouTube and you haven't already, please make sure you go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell. If you want the audio-only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, click the search bar, type in the Format Podcast, hit enter, give us a little search, and we should come right up. You can subscribe right there if you haven't already. Please make sure you give us that thumbs up or that 5-star review. Make sure you share the podcast with other people you know who want to hear some out-of-the-box thinking and a different take on the sports stories of the day than you might hear on all the other mainstream sports channels. And finally, make sure you do all these things because it helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. Now let's get right to it. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Mitch Richmond, Reggie Miller, Ray Allen, Allen Iverson, all-time great shooting guards. James Harden? Nah. Not at all. So check this out, right? For years, we were hearing about how James Harden was an all-time elite shooting guard and one of the greatest wing players the game has ever seen, right? We would hear that from the traditional sports media. And for the time that he was in Houston, he averaged over those 9 seasons 29 points a game and almost 8 assists. So he was definitely getting busy in Mike D'Antoni's system. But here's the problem. James Harden always managed to disappear when you needed him most. He is one of the worst playoff performers of all time. I never believed in James Harden. I'm not saying this now because he had another terrible game in a deciding Game 7 yesterday, because he's one of the worst Game 7 playoff performers we've ever seen. Like the other day, I was telling you guys LeBron James is one of the best elimination game playoff performers we've ever seen. James Harden is the opposite side of that coin. He's one of the worst, all right? And if you don't believe me, let's just hear what Stephen A. Smith has to say about it. Check it out. We'll be right back to discuss it.
9 points on 3 out of 11 shooting, 5 turnovers, okay? We're talking about a guy in James Harden who went 5 games in a 7-game series scoring 4 field goals or less. 4 field goals or less. We talk about a 3-time scoring champion. We talk about a dude that led the league in assists this year. We talk about a dude that averages 20 in his sleep and couldn't score more than 4 field goals in a game 5 times in 7 games. 5 times in 7 games. So I got more. Stay with me now. Career Game 7s. Harden, 21 points and 36% shooting, 22% shooting from three-point range. James Harden has the worst three-point percentage in Game 7s in NBA playoff history. Did you know that? Did you know that?
God bless America.
In NBA playoff history, minimum of 25 attempts. Minimum of 25 attempts. There is no three-point shooter that is worse than James Harden in NBA history in Game 7s. Even though Harden has had his moments of futility, I have never seen him, nor any star, that bad in a Game 7.
Okay, so Stephen A. definitely said a mouthful there. So let's start with this, right? What I thought was interesting. One of the things I thought was interesting about this, and again, I never believed in James Harden. I always thought that his scoring ability, yes, he made a lot of big shots in his career, but I always thought that his scoring ability was a big part in a big part of the product of Mike D'Antoni's system, right? And Mike D'Antoni's system, we know, makes guys into elite scorers, maybe guys who really aren't that. We saw Jeremy Lin go off. Now, he didn't go off for 9 years. He went off for about 3 weeks, but you get the point. That system can really make things go, right? In a league where you're not allowed to play defense anymore, where for the most part, guys can't get physical, they can't put their hands on you, and in a league where the rules were changed to allow him to gather step on his quote-unquote patented step back jump shot. Don't even let me get started on that. But the point I'm trying to make is you had 4 games in a 7-game series where you could not make more than 4 field goals, and you're supposed to be one of the all-time elite guys. Come on, get out of here with that. Yeah, you snuck them with the 42 points in Game 1. All right, I give you credit for that. You had 2 big wins, right? So you definitely had two big games this series, but for the most part, you were nowhere to be found, and especially not when it was needed most. You had 9 points yesterday, James Harden, 3 for 11. First of all, you only took 11 shots, and then you only made three. Like, what's going on here? I think that there's a lot of reasons being given for James Harden being what he's being or whatever, but the fact is, I don't believe he wants to be great. Okay, I don't. Now you're hearing rumors about him possibly wanting to go back to Houston this year. First of all, I don't know what he thinks he's going to do in Houston. Ime Udoka is the coach down there, and Ime Udoka don't play. He's going to want James Harden to play defense. He's going to want him to be in shape. He's going to want him to be a leader, and James Harden is none of those things. All James Harden is out for himself, get his buckets and get to the strip club every night. I mean, that's what it is. That's what we've known about this dude for his whole career. There's nothing that would make you believe that he would fit with a coach like Ime Udoka. It's just, that's not going to work. But then you got Daryl Morey, who's the GM in Philly, and he was obviously the former GM in Houston when James Harden was there. Those two guys get along really well. But if you're doing your job, Daryl Morey, James Harden wants to get paid again this summer. If you're Philly, you can't pay him. What are you paying him for? This is a guy that disappears when you need him most. What are you paying him for? You can't. So is Houston going to pay him and ruin their young core, who Udoka is going to be down there and he's a taskmaster? You know, what do you do if you're James Harden? Like, I don't know, but I hope Philly doesn't make the mistake of paying this guy. So anyway, you have 4 games in this series, in this 7-game series, where you made less than 4 field goals. That's insane. Then you hear the stats that Stephen A. Smith gave us, where he's explaining that James Harden is the worst Game 7 3-point shooter in the history of the NBA, minimum 25 attempts. Like, that's insane to think about. This is a volume shooter who has made shot after shot after shot in his career. And like I mentioned to you just now, over that 9-year stretch in Houston, averaged almost 30 points per game. This is the guy who knows how to put the ball in the basket. This is a guy who's a former MVP, okay? This is a guy who gets it done. This is the guy who they said was one of the all-time elite scorers in the league. They tried to tell me after he averaged 36 a game a few years back that he was a better scorer than Kobe. They tried to tell me after he averaged 36 a game a few years back that he was a better scorer than Michael Jordan. Apparently, analytically, he was a better scorer than Michael. See, this is why I did the show a few weeks back saying analytics are trash. But anyway, if you want to check that out, just check that out on the channel. But regardless, anytime analytics can tell you that James Harden is better than Michael Jordan at something other than shooting the 3 ball, don't listen to him. It's utterly ridiculous. So, I mean, if I'm the manager, if I'm the GM in Philly, I'm telling James Harden, listen, you take a pay cut, or we're gonna ship you wherever we want to ship you. That's it. If you want to be here, you're gonna take a pay cut, because I don't think it's gonna happen for Houston. I don't think it's gonna happen in Houston at all. So I'm just sitting here and I'm thinking, you can't depend on James Harden. And if you're Joel Embiid, what are you thinking about? Like, I was getting on Embiid yesterday for him being the MVP and him being the best player on that team and him failing miserably when his team needed him most. But then you start thinking about James Harden and where was he during this series? Where was he during Game 7? Because if you're James Harden and you're a guy that gets buckets and you see Embiid floundering and failing like that and your season's on the line, well, take it over. You have the ability to do it, right? But do you have the desire? Do you have the heart, right? James Harden seems to suffer from tiny heart syndrome. That's what it looks like. Tiny heart syndrome. That's what he has. And it's a bad look. So many players today who are supposed to be the best players of all time, and this league is the most skilled it's ever been. But where are these guys when you need them most? It's nonsense. But I'm not going to get into an argument about my era of the NBA versus the current era of the NBA. But I will say this. James Harden, you're an absolute disgrace when it comes to Game 7 or elimination games. The numbers bear it out, and anyone who's looking at you can see that. So it's sad. Anyway, what I want to know from you is, what do you think about James Harden? What do you think about his Game 7 performance? Do you think he still deserves to be thought of as an all-time great scoring guard, scoring 2 guard? Where do you think he ranks? And does his continual playoff failures hurt his legacy in your eyes? Go ahead, leave your comments in the comment section. Can't wait to hear from you, and I'll be back next episode. And I'm out. Peace.